A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning. It's a Friday morning, and some are already saying it's the beginning of a holiday. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. This is my best day of the week. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Well, I guess Marco is still getting ready, but we'll get to have, there's a way you always begin these chats. So many issues to talk about at every given point in time. We're not done talking about the Kuje prisons. We're not done talking. Okay, just yesterday there was this report that the Refugee Commission is talking about building, what do you call it now? Displacement cities for IDPs, and the first question
displacement cities.
Yeah.
Or is it resettlement cities? Let's take a closer look at the script.
Whatever. And then the first question that came to my head in that one is a governance issue. Is there a way to prevent that from happening? It only takes my mind straight to, okay, the people that we're recruiting, had the process of recruiting, all these people to ensure that we don't get to the place of thinking about building 5 resettlement cities for use by displaced persons in the country. So rather than them being displaced in the first place, we avoid that. It's a governance issue. As I said, Kuje prisons, we're not done talking about it. We, just stick on.
I just wonder what the rationale is behind building displacement cities. So, did they call these cities just to give it some sort of, nomenclature or what? So if you're going to build cities, they were displaced from similar cities in the first place.
That's my point.
What happens if those cities are attacked again?
What's the difference between these resettlement cities, and the IDP camps? Are these displaced persons going to own the cities? Are these cities built in such a way that they're economically powered, such that the internally displaced persons can begin to work and earn, such that they're not dependent on
They can't live rent-free?
Well, yeah, they're not living from hand to mouth, from government's hand to mouth.
So why can't we resettle them from where they came from in the first place?
My point.
We need a lot of information as far as this is concerned, because the DG was talking about increasing the capacity of the cities that have thrown up these refugees to be able to integrate them. So what is capacity? That's what I'm talking about, an economy.
My point in all of this, lady and gentlemen, is the people we recruit to do these jobs. I mean, this something, Chamberlain, the angle you always take. Look, you got your job. You got this job for a reason. Do the job. So the question is, we're about to recruit another set of people. And there is a way that we do it. It's through the collection of your permanent voter cards. At the time when INEC is talking about some 20 million uncollected PVCs, you remember in Lagos, it was the wreck in Lagos that was saying there's 1 million, more than 1 million uncollected PVCs in Lagos alone.
That's as at what? Pre-2015 elections?
And
sorry, 2019 elections?
And who knows how many others now, especially with the increased number of voters, some 18, well, it's about 10, but between 8 and 10 million fully registered Nigerians now all across the various parts of the country. There are so many questions around the process of people getting their PVCs. Is it the problem of the process or the willingness? Some person we engaged here, if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, there was this person who said, look, some people collect their PVCs for sundry reasons. It was a prof we were talking about. Some people collect the PVCs not because they want to use it.
But that's a different matter.
For a legitimate
Once you register, you collect it, you collect it.
Yes.
Now, if you've collected it, if you can't collect it, that settles the collection challenge or the collection bit.
Okay.
So whatever else you want to do, it's up to the people.
Okay.
Themselves.
Okay,
who
fine.
pick it up.
Advocate of the people.
So,
I get that.
That's the
But
thing.
now, the point is, why are people not collecting the PVCs?
So are they not collecting the PVC?
Well,
are they able to collect the PVCs?
I can't forget our conversation, our most recent conversation with the INEC Commissioner for Voter Education, Mr. Festus Okoye. And, we engaged him to a large extent on this matter. I recall you were talking to him about the number of local governments, how people know, the local government that they can go to access those PVCs. Do Nigerians even know that there's an INEC office in each local government, 774 local governments. I remember Mr. Festus Okoye also talked about that. I remember we also asked him about how INEC is using communication to get across to the people. The emails, send emails to the people, say, okay, this is where you can collect your PVCs. I don't know how well INEC is using that to communicate to the people to get their PVCs. Then we should also consider the JACPA issue. A lot of Nigerians
PVC collectors
may have, jetted out of the country. So perhaps this explains.
Yeah, but what about the stats? It's
a large number of uncollected,
2015, 2019.
Maybe a portion of uncollected PVCs.
Well, who knows? But if you look at the figures too, 2015, 2019, and now. So those are also there. But the thing is, those who've been studying it closely with INEC, even though we did ask INEC, so do we have the opportunity of accessing those data by them publishing it such that people can see those areas that I've collected? Can INEC advise how are these people doing it? How is it that so much? Remember, people raise concerns too.
Yeah.
The ICs are cities that are a little smaller are able to pick up their PVCs faster, smoother, with a higher percentage than some others who happen to be a little more populated. So if those areas have a lot more challenges, so what's going on? Yes, INEC says we can't give people by proxy. Are people requesting it by proxy?
Yes, they are.
For people
I
to
recall
pick
when
up
I
by
registered
proxy.
many years ago, husbands will come and request to collect for their wives, but INEC would say no.
But that must have been back then.
That's a long time ago, isn't it? Okay, so if that happens, so if the husbands were able to pick it up, tell their wives, go pick up from the same place that the husband picked up, so they know how that can be collected. That's one. And so if INEC says, we send people text messages, we send them emails, is that being effective?
But that's one of the suggestions that was made to INEC, that, why do you have our emails, you have our phone numbers, why don't you send text messages to people? That question still revolves around, do people know the local government offices for INEC in their various, parts of the country? But that's another question altogether.
Have they checked and saw
if
that
you,
they didn't see that?
want to get a new ATM from your bank and you make the necessary applications, you get an email saying that your ATM is ready for collection. Visit the nearest bank branch.
Exactly.
And it's that easy. Mankwe.
Well, I know you guys are talking about I was just about to say ATMs because Buki said ATM. PVC, good morning, Nigeria. But can I divert attention a little? Can I ask you, while we're asking Nigerians who have registered and who perhaps might, I do not know, did they receive notifications that their PVCs are ready? But at least they should go and check, because INEC is really complaining that they have over 20 million cards in their custody. And, they are wondering why there is such a low collection rate. So getting registered is one part of the hurdle, please. The final hurdle is for you to pick up your PVC. I just talked about diverting attention. I wanted to ask, what exactly is the fuel situation in Lagos like? Do you still have queues there?
Yeah. There are queues in some areas. I saw queues this morning coming through. So, but I think the NNPC was speaking about that. Yes, no, it was the NNPC or the minister about why they will remain for how long? Yeah, Abuja's got, she said they have a lot, but I saw some queues coming through.
But they are
not as heavy as it was previously. Who knows? I hope we're not counting the chicks before they're hatched now, such that.
And in a lot of filling stations, they're not selling. And where they're selling at 180 naira per litre, even though they have not adjusted their pump price. It's still showing 165 naira, but you buy really at 180 naira per litre.
No, that's not fraud. I don't know what it is.
Well.
And who is asking the questions? That's why we have to employ the right people. Malcolm, you still have the floor.
Employ the right people to work with.
Yes,
NNPC?
to get the job done, to ensure that we don't go through this route all the time. It's like a vicious cycle.
Well, we do not know when these queues are going to ease, but the only thing I can tell you that I noticed, which seemed to be the only bright part of it, is that the queues, at least from what I noticed, have become a bit orderly here in Abuja. Don't forget that we raised this particular issue on our program with Ipman, the Ipman president here in Abuja, as to why the queues cannot be orderly. I mean, why do we have to form 5 queues and everything becomes chaotic? Why do we have to increase the blood pressure level of Nigerians unnecessarily? Yes, there's no petrol. Whatever the challenges are, we're still listening to the NNPC for them to get the story straight. But this is what we have. Is it possible for us to be orderly while trying to dispense this to Nigerians? And then for the past few days, I just noticed that, at least from what I have noticed, there'll be one single, it will be very long, very, very long, but just one single queue. And you have to get on that queue for you to be able to get petrol, at least from the filling stations that I have monitored along the airport road. And I just want to tell the marketers that we've noticed, and if there's anything, if they're deliberately doing this, they should please keep it up, because people have an idea of when they get on that queue and when they come out, while we wait on the NNPC to, help us make sense, because this is not normal. This should not become the new normal for Nigerians. We refuse to accept that, a lack of petrol from a country that exports crude oil, that is an oil-producing country, will be the new norm. We refuse to accept that. But in the meantime, I think it is worth commending those who are trying to ensure that whatever little they have, they're able to dispense in a very orderly manner, and in a manner that doesn't increase people's blood pressures unnecessarily. Gentlemen.
Yeah, what a society, It's this kind of things. Much as it's good to see that, I'm about to say that we hope that at the end of the day, when the pressure is a lot more, they'll keep calm and maintain that orderliness at the end of the day. But I guess time will tell. Yeah. Through some of the dailies today. With the Guardian newspaper today, and see how they highlight these things. So the lead story on the front page of the Guardian is talking about something completely different. It's a different kind of challenge. It's a different kind of challenge. Look at that. Also, NAFDAC joins Research Institute's strike. Food safety threatened. So,
summary: NAFDAC is on strike.
There you go. Ah, boy, oh boy. I guess what? Rains, reports, right? Agric, Medical Water, Soil Institutes paralyzed. Absence of NAFDAC at port spells doom for food, drug safety. Port congestion worsens. Product approval delayed. Boy.
That is not
just where do you start with this kind of scenario? When NAFDAC joins Research Institute's strike, food safety threatened, you can only ask, so who exactly is in charge? Because from the look of things, everybody seems to be doing whatever they want at whatever agency, and appears as though nobody's in charge. Have you seen the rate at which people are being charged for corruption now? It's no longer 1, 2, 3 billion. You hear 80 billion. In another breath, 70 billion. In another breath, you just ask, what is going on? Boy.
The ease with which these things are possible.
If FCC is not overwhelmed, then ICC.
If the people are not overwhelmed, then there is a problem. If they are not as overwhelmed as they ought to be, then I would say there is a major problem. For me, as I said, the problem for me is the ease with which this thing is possible. The ease with which corruption can happen, can take place. And we've talked about, countless times we've talked about the Auditor General's report. We've talked about the Office of the Accountant General, the Office of the Auditor General. Many people are talking about the audit bill, and one is wondering where all of this is going. Anyway.
Well, who knows? We hope that at the end of the day, people pay attention. But people have got to ask questions in order to ensure that the right things are done. That's the Guardian today.
News Direct is talking about another kind of energy this morning. Guardian is talking about food, that's energy. But look at it, front page of the Nigerian News Direct, rising subsidy. We won't be able to pay salaries. Governors lament.
They lament about security not working, but you know, Mr. Fadon, I said, look, you have the point of law on your side. Go ahead, convene that meeting and say it as it is. You have your members in the National Assembly. Why can't you call them and tell them, look, this is the challenge the country is facing. Let us address it. Only for governors to keep lamenting. Lamenting for who?
What?
Okay, if you can't decide, please resign.
Chamberlain, you
say you employ the right people, and now you don't want them to the other right people to come through. Okay,
ladies
I don't know what you want
and
anymore.
gentlemen, should we say this is lamentations of Chamberlain or lamentations of who?
I'm still here. I'm not lamenting. I'm not a governor. I can speak for myself. Can't I?
But truly, it is just...
I think we should take a closer look at the story.
Well, we will.
What has subsidy got to do with the governors? Are governors the ones responsible for subsidy?
Let's see if the writers say anything about it. Chamberlain is just, as we say on the streets, provoking.
No, I'm not provoking. I'm just stating the obvious. Please.
Okay. Anyway,
stating the obvious.
Let's look at the writers. Call for accountability, transparency of oil, gas revenues. That's the governors now. Nigeria heading towards bankruptcy, Barrister Madaki says, and give local refinery operations a chance, as ascribed to a Hindera. Well, as Bukola, I think you're right. We need to even know the angle from
we need
which
to
the
interrogate the story, and we can't...
That's the revenue. If revenue is not coming through, you know you have... Okay, well, go ahead.
Okay, let's leave...
No, I'm still a little interested in, in that. Because, if we...
Why the lamentation?
Why is the lamentation?
Look,
we knew...
That shed some light for you, didn't
all the way. No, it doesn't.
The writers didn't?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. At least not so much as yet.
Oh, okay.
Don't forget that...
Are they paying salaries from subsidy?
Now, the salaries, you remember when there was a salary increase, was it in 2019 or thereabout? The governor said, we may not be able to pay the salaries. Now, with the subsidy figures rising, federal government will have to pull the resources from somewhere. So where is it going to come from? I think that is the question the governors... I don't know. Maybe that is where the governors are raising the issues. They are calling for accountability and transparency of oil and gas revenues. Now, that, of course, is the cash cow of the country. It's where we derive FAC from, where the federal government gets its own, the state governments get its own. So if the percentages, no matter what the percentage is, if the figures reduce, it'll affect what goes to the different states.
Are you saying that if subsidy increases, then all of the other realities will reduce? For instance, federal allocation and all of that?
I'm just postulating.
That is the reason why we should demand more accountability and transparency where oil and gas revenues are concerned.
Shouldn't we even demand more accountability from governors, how they spend the ones that they have first? It's just a question.
Spot on. For instance, the benchmark has been, in the last few months, the oil benchmark now, has gone far beyond expectations with the increase, although oil price has dropped now, but in the last few months, oil price has gone up. So that's more revenue coming in.
Amen.
But you have more people who are queuing, fighting themselves. They want to be governors. In spite of all this, and then tomorrow when they assume office, then they begin to lament. Oh, come on. Come on.
Someone said, make political office less attractive. It's too...
But if they're lamenting, doesn't it say it's less attractive? But they're still going for it.
Bookie, please go to the next paper.
It looks more like the more you look, the less you see. Okay, from News Direct, let's go to the Daily Independent this morning, and it chose a different path, this time with politics. PDP crisis, Atiku rejects bid to substitute Wike for Okowa as VP pick. When are we going to stop having this conversation? When is that deadline, by the way?
After the election?
July 17th is the deadline.
You say, when are we going to stop these stories? Now.
Now. Yes. Okay, so that tells me you're not interested in continuing the conversation.
Let them go to the polls and,
Okay, let's look at some more stories from the front page of the Daily Independent. Going to the right-hand corner, FG launches 2.3 trillion naira plan to close country's infrastructural gap. I wonder how that will be achieved, going by the story we just discussed on the front page of News Direct.
There have been several conversations about that, if you remember the president going, speaking from out of town and saying out country, and a number of other people have said, look, to bridge the infrastructure gap, we need to spend X amount of money over about 10 years or so. Maybe this is part of the plan. As you said the other time, we need to take a closer look at the story.
Okay, one more story before we exit the Daily Independent. Buhari, other leaders raise 93 billion naira to boost economic...
$1 billion, you mean?
$1 billion, yes, thank you, to boost economic capacity of Africa. I wish we could raise that much for Nigeria as well. But that's Daily Independent for you this morning.
Okay, let's go take a look at Daily Trust. And they are talking about Hajj. Tomorrow is the Feast of Eid-el-Kabir. We are not quite certain what holidays or public holidays have been declared yet, especially since today, which is Friday, hasn't been declared a public holiday just yet. But look at the headline. As pilgrims stand on Arafat today, over 3,600 Nigerians missed this year's Hajj. Pilgrims board Fort's Nakan over botched rescue mission. Jaiz Bank meets intending pilgrims, absolves self. Man performs pilgrimage at Kano Hajj camp. Our loss unquantifiable. That's according to tour operators. And Nakan explains glitch. They also have pictures of intending pilgrims right on the front page for you. Over 3,600 of them missing this year's Hajj. That's the lead story on the front page of Daily Trust today. And look at this story. It's been making the rounds on social media, but looks like Daily Trust is lending some credence to this. How attackers shared money, preached before freeing Kuje inmates. So these people had ample time. It's incredulous. I mean, I don't even... looking for the right words to describe just what comes to your mind. That not only did they break the walls, they had ample time to do it, and they took their time to preach to the inmates. The story is on page 3 of Daily Trust this morning. Fake army chief who forged Buhari Obasanjo's signatures jailed 7 years. Court disqualifies Delta PDP governorship candidate. That is also on the front page for you. You have a number of other stories just beneath the nameplate. Northwest, Northeast intensified push for APC VP slot, and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigns. So let's leave it there for the paper.
Yeah.
Let's quickly take a few others. Oh, thank you, Chamberlain. Let's quickly take a look at a few others. Vanguard, I was about to say our sports for choice. Look at what the Vanguard has for you. Kuje attack. Our security system has failed. That's according to the Senate. Yes, you did see Senate President Ahmed Lawan, as well as other senators, visiting the Kuje facility yesterday. Queries lack of CCTV at facility to summon the CGE prison authorities for post-mortem. Says relevant authorities must be sanctioned. Nigeria on the siege. That's according to Afenifere, Ohaneze, MBF, Pandef, Bode George, SDP, others. 51 security personnel on ground during the attack. That's according to the Controller General. Federal government begins probe, launches manhunt for fleeing inmates. And just in case you're wondering, the type of inmates who escaped from that prison, look at this. Kidnapped kingpin, Wadume, Al-Barnawi among escapees from Kuje prison. So page 6 will give you perhaps more details as to the number of and the quality, not the quality, the caliber of prisoners whom we're looking for who are currently on the run. Page 6 is where we'll find details. Look at this. Anambra government demolishes part of Odumeje's church building. That's also on the front page. And look at the story as well. Ekweremadu, kidney donor, not a minor. UK court rules. That's also there. And today is Friday, so we're allowed to take Mr. and Mrs. Let's look at what this is about. Mrs. says, "You've never told me this story before. You mean you tried a thing like that? You applied the love powder on your face to woo me? So what happened next?" Well, Mr. says, "I was just 25 meters away from your house when it started raining heavily." Oh, well. At least you're Mr. and Mrs. now, so powder or no powder, something eventually worked. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspapers.
Next time, try what I did. Put it in your back pocket. When you raise, you know what to do.
Did that make the headlines as well?
On that note, on that note.
Chamberlain, how did you have access to that information?
That's why I say on that note, not this note.
You know he's in.
We'll be back in a moment, everybody. Don't go away.
Well, I'm sure you're watching that report. You watched that report just as we did, and I do not know how you're processing that. But we have somebody who perhaps might have been able to process it and make some sense of just what we watched during the visit of the Senate President. The fact that a facility like that had no functional CCTVs. We're joined this morning by Mr. Wilson Inaligo, who is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. The more I look at this story, the more it looks like a script, a badly written script from fiction. I mean, the more details you hear of it, the more you are in a state of wonder and bewilderment as to what exactly is going on in our country. When you hear things like a prison facility doesn't have functional CCTV cameras, when you hear things like the inmates had, those who rescued or who freed, who did the jailbreak, had time to preach. They organized a sermon of some sort to the inmates before giving their members transport money and then, letting people go. You have to ask, what exactly are we looking at here? What are we dealing with?
Yeah, certainly the attack on Kuje Correctional Center is an unfortunate development, and it's quite sad. Especially that we have recorded attacks in various prisons. Owerri Prison, Jos Prison, Kotonkarfe, Kaba, and now Kuje in the FCT.
That there was precedence before
so
this particular attack.
I think there should have been lessons learned. And based on lessons learned, and then based on evolving daunting security challenges, such area of focus must be given adequate attention. And I believe investigation will be carried out. Or there could be even an inquiry into what really happened. So when you have that inquiry, it's going to bring out more facts, because we are hearing a lot of things. But when things like this happen, we begin to question what kind of security arrangement is on ground, what kind of resistance did the officers on ground put, how is the perimeter security protected. I don't know if there are no CCTV cameras in that place, but there should have been, because for a facility of that magnitude, of that size, of that significance, you should have CCTV cameras so that from a room you could see what is happening, and with the radio communication you see what is going on around it. And I think when things like this happen, I ask, what is the relationship of even the prison with their immediate community? Because one of the accounts I read by those who live very close, they saw some people miling around, smoking, and they didn't know them. And nobody put a call to any person. So I think there are basics that should be provided. And such a place should be difficult to penetrate. So, first of all, the question I want to ask is, how many officers were on duty? What kind of arms did they carry? What kind of resistance did they put? I think these are issues that should be interrogated. But more importantly, like I have always said when I come to your studio, it's about security, it's about partnership. The moment you have breached that security in the immediate vicinity of the prison, of course it's very difficult to do. But what happened before then? With these sleeper cells of these terrorists, did we have any inkling that they were coming? Did we have information? Did we act on the information? So how was our response? If those on duty were overwhelmed, what of the first responders? How were we able to respond? Some people, how did we mobilize the entire intelligence, law enforcement, and other people within our communities to be able to rearrest some of these people? So I think there are a lot of questions begging for answers. But essentially, law enforcement, intelligence is the focus, the pillar of success is on partnership. I don't know what really happened. And I think it would be really unfortunate if there are no CCTVs, because with all that has happened, I don't believe that there are no CCTVs. So I find it difficult.
From the visuals that we saw, I mean, from the visuals that our correspondent captured, there are CCTVs there, but they are non-functional from the testimony of the Senate President. I mean, he paid a visit there, and he talked about non-functional CCTV. So the cameras are there. Yeah. We purchased them at some point, but they're not working.
Yeah, but that is why there should be accountability. Somebody should be responsible for manning the CCTV. Somebody should be there to ensure that the CCTVs work. What I used to do when I was in one of the South West states as Commissioner of Police, if we had an incident or attack in a bank, and what I do you have functional CCTV? And if there are no functional CCTVs, the first line of suspect or suspicion I have, there should be internal connivance. Either you switch off when you have connived and all this. But one of the things I want us to address, because you may not rule out internal collaboration, perhaps not by the correctional officers, but by the inmates, because what is the level, are they allowed to use telephone? At night, how was it easy to identify the cell that these terrorists were detained? How come they were put in the same cell, which provides ground for them to enter into any kind of connivance to perpetuate this? Because we've got to, I expect the superintending officers of the Correctional Center to have spot checks in the various cells where are people carrying phones? Because if they are carrying phones into their cells, unknown to the officers or with the connivance of some unscrupulous correctional officers, that can compromise the security of the prison. Because I think there was proper timing, but because there has been a lot of lessons learned. Perhaps we need to put all this from all the attacks on the other prisons. I think it should have been able to generate some documentation.
I think you mean to say that a lot of lessons were generated, but it doesn't look like any were learned.
Yeah, well, because
if lessons were learned, I mean, when you take a look at the questions which the president himself asked on his visit, how did the defenses at the prison fail to prevent the attack? How many inmates were in the facility? How many of them can you account for? How many personnel did you have on duty? How many of them were armed? Were there guards on the watchtower? What did they do? Does the CCTV? these are the same questions you and I are asking. So if we, I mean, from the accounts that we have seen, that we have heard, and from what we have seen on the ground, it doesn't look like any lessons were imbibed from previous attacks.
Yeah, you see, that is what I've been trying to say, because, like you say, if you generate lessons, we expect that these lessons will be imbibed and incorporated in training and in part of briefing to officers. But sometimes, some officers may not do the needful. That's why I think
but it's
some
the
officers...
duty of somebody to make them do the needful, isn't it? The way security hierarchy works,
Yes.
Isn't it the duty of somebody to make sure that officers do what they need to do at certain times?
Yeah, that's why there are sanctions on officers who fail, who derelict on their duty. Like in the MPF, the police. When things like this happen, we address issues of supervision. They were addressing issues of dereliction of duty. And we also address issues of us bringing the force to public embarrassment. So I think there will be sanctions, certainly, because there must have been some failure. We don't say that these things cannot happen. They can happen, but there should be some level of fight back, you know, no matter how small. But even if you say all this, the partnership we develop with our communities is what is going to prevent that they never even get to, even to the facility. Like I have always emphasized, the moment you breach the walls, the other inside will collapse. So the major point, and that is the take for all intelligence, law enforcement, and other non-state actors, that what we need to do, we must build partnership. We must share information on the need to know. We must bring our communities from the ward level, from the local government level, and the state level, so that if there are no exchange of information, because I think when these people are massing up, some people see them. So we've got to train our communities to recognize when there are threats and how they can disseminate such information to relevant authorities. When you don't do that, because the law enforcement agencies alone, like even if you had deployment in that place and they had no prior knowledge, somebody has to interdict, to intercept before these things happen. And the idea is this: the FCT has to be given top-class security protection. And you don't protect by only protecting infrastructure and government departments alone. You've got to go to the outlying areas, because when they come, many of them are not going to stay in Maitama. They are going to stay in Asokoro, because people find them. But they are more likely to stay in places like Gwagwalada, also Kuje, because of its semi-rural nature. They are going to stay in Buari. They are going to stay in Abaji, in Kwale. So what arrangement do we have in those places? How do we treat the threats that emanate from those places? And in worship centers, when you find somebody, next person sitting on a pew in the church, have you seen that fellow before? Where has that fellow come from? Or in the mosque, early morning prayer, somebody joins you in prayer. Where has that guy come from? There must be a mechanism for passing on such information about strange individuals in communities, strange behavior. So everything is about community trust based on partnership.
Further lessons which you're generating, and maybe we should apologize to our viewers that, you know, we're still in a state of shock. I'm sure they too are. They're still trying to wrap their heads around the event that happened 2 nights ago. But what I'd like to ask is what exactly we should be doing now? Because we've been told that over 400 inmates are still on the run. A number of them dangerous terrorists. From the reaction, from what you have seen so far, the response of government in trying to mobilize the people to get these people back, have you seen the level of mobilization which you say can inspire confidence in you that indeed we're hot on the trails of these people who are fleeing the custodial center?
Yeah, on the physical level, we are seeing a lot of patrols, increased patrols, especially within the precincts of Kuje and his.
You're saying patrols?
Yes, some patrols and checkpoints to check, but that is going to happen. But I think there are officers that are not in uniform, plainclothes officers, that have mingled with the communities. I think those officers, there is massive deployment by the police SIB and I believe operatives of the TSS and other intelligence units. They are all out because this is a call to action by all. And we've got to also look at even the hospitals.
Is it too late, 48 hours after?
No, it's not too late. Even 3 months. Because these people are not used to the larger society. They've been kept aside. Their behavior will offer some strange distance. So you are going to look for them in hotels, at motor parks. You are going to see some of them. You are going to see some of them in labor, people standing on the road to be employed, to work in building sites, because they are going to, some of them may not have enough money. Forget about that story that they gave each one 2,000. I'm not sure 2,000 can take somebody from here to Kano or to Ibadan. So they may need to work in some building sites. Even in security, if you see people, building sites, employing security, this one is from Niger, this one is from Chad, you engage them, any strange person. So there must be mass population in the various community radios, the FM stations and television like yours, mobilizing the people. Once you do that, you are going to get a lot of them back, But what I am interested in is we've got to look at a general assessment. I'm happy that top government officials, including the president himself, visited the facility. A lot of changes are going to take place. Even the lessons that have been generated, some have been learned. But just like you say, with due apology, some of these attacks are so fast, so rapid, that they can take somebody unawares. But getting these people back, we've got to work with the national road transport workers. We've got to work with hotel owners. We've got to work with hair salon, especially the local areas where, the barb about 200-300, because some of them may have overgrown hair. And then if you look at them psychologically, and I know the prison officials are so good in recognizing their inmates. And I believe the correctional authorities must have deployed all the officers from their headquarters to their zonal and command levels. They are very, very good. They are going to get some of these people back. But neighboring states of Niger, Kaduna, Kogi, Nasarawa, and those highly populated areas of Maraba, Madala, Suleja, all these places must be infiltrated, and they are going to get some of them back. And also,
I'm just taking a look as the visuals are playing. This is when the president visited. I'm looking at the medium security facility itself from the outside, and how how maintained it looks. It does say a lot about our maintenance culture. It says a lot about, just how we regard it. Only recently, there's a lot of fanfare around how, we've changed the name from the Nigerian Prison Service to Nigerian Correctional Facility. When you look at the algae growing on the walls, the state of the facility in general, and this one in Abuja, in Kuje, is supposed to be one of the best around the country. You have to ask, wasn't this going to come? If we're going to take a critical look and an analysis of what it is that we're doing, this attack is not unexpected.
Well, going by the history of attacks in some of the facilities, we should anticipate
not just
that
the history,
Kuje,
but the state of the facilities.
Yes. I think that is why I say going forward, we've got to look at the structure of our facilities. We've got to make it possible that even if you break in, you will not be able to free any inmate. And when you are, I want to align with you that there must be a need for an upgrade, kind of. And what do I mean by upgrade? When you are coming from the back, try as much as possible to keep residential, even though they are for officers, a little bit distant, so that you can create a buffer between the facility and this thing. And now where you have a ravine or a stream running through, you've got to know that it's your vulnerable point. That when a facility is going to be attacked, because even in burglary, from experience, that where you have these canals, you will have your patrols along the highways, and these guys go through the canal, break into a house, and they escape through the canal. So from what the report said, there's a place like a canal or a stream at the back. I don't know if they infiltrated through that end, but CCTV camera will help a lot, because number one, even if it will act as a prevention, because you could see, even if you don't see any breach, in investigation, you are going to see certain things that the account that you are getting may not be as accurate as what really happened. And this you use in your training school. I think we need to think. Let me give you an example. I was in a peacekeeping mission in a foreign country several years ago, and they had this issue of liberation fighters attacking police facilities, correctional centers, and all the rest. And they did something. They made it impossible that, but it's in a war situation, that in such facility, they are protected by a cordon. If you try to enter through any way that is not authorized, you are going to have a blast. And that will keep you away. So where you have high profile, you've got to say it's a danger zone. So nobody is going to penetrate unless through the perimeter fence, unless the road you have created. And all officers are warned. And I think we are getting to a level that we've got to upgrade temporarily. When the threat is over, we can remove such protection. But I think we've got to think of penetrating. And then we've got to also design the prisons like it is not to have a place that is not easy to break, even underground, that you can protect. And then they have basements that even if you enter. So I think going forward, if there are new prisons to be built or makeovers of these prisons, I think they should be designed in such a way that you've got to breach several fences before you get, to the inmates. That will help. But we are dealing with terrorism. We are dealing with violent extremism. And when you are dealing with situation, and it's evolving, we've got to carry every person on board. And we've got to mind certain things, the little behavior of our officers, especially in a correctional center. Yes, you've got to be friendly with the inmates, but there should be a red line. Don't give them phone. Don't let them make phone calls. I have seen, not in Nigeria, but where I was in a foreign mission on the West Coast, where major crime was being planned from the prison. And the kingpin was in the prison. He had his phone, and he was organizing violent crime until it was traced to him. So if you allow inmates to carry crime, but if you have it in a structured manner, that if they need to contact relations for whatever, they should make through phone call through official means, but private phones in the cells. Because they can do everything.
For a long time, I know that, as a TV station, we had done some reports on the fact that inmates were, allowed to carry their phones in, not the Abuja Correctional Center, but in Lagos. And if it was happening in Lagos, there's no telling if it, it would not be a surprise if it was happening here in Abuja as well. Not only did they have phones there, they had generating sets to charge their phones. These are things that we're able to capture on our cameras. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions to ask about the state of our correctional, in quote, facilities. But I'm just looking at the aftermath of this, because for a number of people, confidence has been broken, and they're wondering what assurances, because so far so good. We have not been able to hear from the Minister of Interior, the CG of Immigration, beg your pardon, now the Controller General of the Nigeria Prison Service or Correctional Service has not spoken, apart from the visitors who have been, the high-profile visitors who have been to the facility. There has been no official question and answer session where people can actually glean what exactly is going on. There has been nobody to really address Nigerians on what measures are being put in place. Okay, so maybe, I don't know what exactly happens within security circles when this sort of breach happens. Do they call all security officers, brief them and tell them what next to expect?
No. When you have a situation like this, you've got to give out the information you have initially. I think the PAMSEC in the Interior did address the press. I think something like that happened. But when you've got to be careful the information you give out, and you want to really understand the situation, what really occurred. And I think the Immigration Service, the Correctional Service is going to give out, detailed information of what happened on what they are doing. But I think the public should not be demoralized. I think we must continue to have confidence in our security forces. Within the time this happened, several inmates were brought back. And we must commend the security agencies for that. But we must also not lose confidence in them, because if we do, then we are in trouble. That's what the terrorists want to achieve. Therefore, what do? We've got to support them. We've got to go all out there to support them. And in supporting them, we've got to look at, if there are things that we think they should have done, they didn't do, we must find means of communicating such to the authority. And also, we must see all the security agencies are partners. We must encourage interagency cooperation and collaboration, because it is in partnership that we can win. Partnership with the public. I emphasize hospitals, mental homes, because some of these things that occur, some of these things I think are mentally deranged. And we must come together. We must not see it from any window. We must see it from the perspective that these are enemies of the society. They are not enemies of Christians or Muslims or anything. They're enemies of our society. They're enemies of our communities. What do they seek to do? They seek to destroy life. They seek to cause fear and panic. They seek to bring down our economy. So we must come together as a people and fight them. We must not see them. And that is why I want to re-emphasize what I said. If you look at the next person sitting to you in the church, did you see him last Sunday? Did you see him
Who should people report to in the events that they see people that are strange around the environment? What numbers have been publicized, in the wake of this attack, to say if you see something strange, report to those numbers? We haven't quite heard anything.
Yeah, I think I read online, and each time the police PRO comes out, usually, like if I were in service, as I'm sitting here, you'll be seeing the hotlines scrolling. And I think it is part of the partnership that I talk about. I think TV stations, radio stations should occasionally or frequently broadcast police hotlines and other security hotlines. That way you can cooperate. But more importantly, at the ward level, every ward should have a mini security committee or district level or local government level. You see, security like politics is local.
Indeed.
All these people exist in our communities. So there must be active collaboration, and there must be support for security forces. Let me give you an example.
No, I'm sorry, we're totally out of time. We do not have time for more examples. But in terms of the hotline, I can tell you that, you know, if we do get the hotlines, we're happy to scroll them so that people can, you know who to call. We have to thank you so much for, shedding light on trying to help make sense of what transpired at the Kuje prisons 2 days ago. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Wilson Inaligo is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police and has been speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. We'll take a break now and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Seyi Adetayo joins us next as a former state security operative to weigh in on the matter. Good morning and thank you for joining us on the program as well today. Now, there are several questions out there. Many are unsatisfied with the kind of response they've gotten from the authorities to the extent that they suspect that there's a lot more going on with this attack. I mean, from your perspective, wearing your cap as a former security operative, what's your assessment of what is going on with this?
Well, this particular attack is one attack too many, and it is one that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Quite a lot of people must be held responsible for this, because it's difficult for the Ministry of Interior, the Prison Correctional Service, to say that they are not aware that such an attack is being planned. And so the questions that begs answer is, what have they done since they've been receiving intelligence, even from the benefit of insight that Kuje prison will be attacked based on the demands of Abuja Cardinal trained attackers? What have they done? Why is it easy? Why is it that every time there is an incursion into our prisons, we don't see a time when armed squad of the Nigerian Correctional Service will repel an attack? So what is the essence of the armed squad of the NCS? How much of training have they been given? Is it a welfare issue? Is it that they are non-existent? Or is it that the weapons they are carrying are not good enough? Why is it that, if you look at this particular attack, no single injured NCS officer have been announced so far. And if there is no how such an attack would take place, and there is a response from the Nigerian Correctional Service officers or guards on duty, that you will not see probably someone with a gunshot wound or someone with someone killed. But when we have a situation where none, it means that is either they drop their weapon and ran away, or they carry their weapon and ran away. And this is, becoming a frequent scenario. The only time that we've seen where attempts at attacking the prisons were repelled were done by the Nigerian Army. Army personnel deployed immediately into those facilities. So we've not seen any so far. So there's a major issue with the way the Nigerian Correctional Service is being operated or is being run at present. It could be a budgetary issue, it could be manpower issue, and it's also likely a capacity issue. I'm surprised when General Dambazao is speaking. He used to be Minister of Interior. The question is that what did he do while he was Minister of Interior? Because this is part of his legacy. He handed over to the successor. Yeah. What were they able to do to protect this same facility before handing over? Because if some things have been done while he held sway, they could have inherited, and they would proceed. So
part of what he also did say is that when that occurred at some point while it was there, he did raise that question with the president, but we didn't get to hear if anything has been done about it, because today many point to certain things and then conclude that there appears to be some sort of conspiracy at the highest level. Part of the questions you raised is no NCS official has been announced to have been injured or killed, as it were, but not that we're praying for any of that to happen. But the thing is, looking at how this played out, first they say there is no functional CCTV. How is it that they told the President of the Senate that there were about 300 terrorists who came through? How did they get all those figures? How is it that the terrorists had all the time in the world to operate, no response, no repelling of any attack? And you also find out that at the moment, we don't know if they have situation in terms of what transpired at that crime scene, recorded evidence. For instance, have you heard or read, I haven't, of any shell, what kind of weaponry, ammunition that were expelled? So is it then, with all of these scenarios, is it fair for lay people or people to suspect, saying, listen, there's certainly something going on here that the authorities are not telling us?
Well, I think the best record we have so far is the 38 seconds footage from ISWAP showing how they attacked the facility. And if you look at the MO of ISWAP, we know that they will bombard in large numbers, and the kind of weapon that they carry, and some we saw in that video in terms of the sound. But see, AIG Wilson said something which is important, and Malkwe also emphasized it, and it's as in something that channels have done before. And I can confirm to you that it's a fact that the inmates in the prisons had phones with them. It's not an assumption. They had phones, and that's part of the issues with Nigerian Correctional Service. In other crimes, yes, an inmate has right to be able to communicate with the outside world, but they are regulated. The communications must be done through the centralized communication system, and they are being monitored. But it's becoming a recurrent issues where the warders are compromised. They are the one who help these people to buy the phones, register the lines, and smuggle it in at a fee. They help them to recharge the phones every now and then. It's not only that, they also sell drugs. They help them to smuggle drugs, weeds, cigarettes into the cells. This is a major issue. That's why I said, no, we need to look at the way the NCS is currently. And it's a pointer to the, this attacks the pointer to the fact that no sooner than, in a very short time, we might see another attack at Kogi prisons. That is, if they are still housing, high profile, deadly criminals in Kogi, because we see several incursions into Kogi because of the caliber of inmates there. And we'll also see in some other prisons, because this has shown that we've never learned from experience of the past, and then we continue to do the same thing over and over and over, and they will continue to get the same results. In the last few years now, we've recorded, mind-blowing numbers of attacks on our prisons, and a government that is really, really concerned about taking those people out of circulation should have done something about it. Now, our focus is on the Boko Haram terrorists. We're neglecting the fact that there are murderers that escaped, arsonists, pedophiles, rapists, big-time scammers, ritualists among the people we are looking for. And if you're judging from the experience, recent experience, the first thing they do is to go on revenge mission. The people who put them in the jail, those who testified against them, they go straight to those communities and kill them. And then how many, Edo prison break, how many have you recovered? The condemned criminals, the ones with long time, and those ones that are big-time criminals, deadly criminals, how many? Imo prison attack, how many? There's several attacks on Kogi prisons. How many have we been able to recover? these people. The problem in Southeast today is as a result of the Edo,
well, Mr.
Imo,
Desire, just one
prison.
moment, if you don't mind me butting in. I mean, there has been that, trail, just as you have said, and one wonders when it'll end. And you just dropped another bombshell. Now it will seem that if we're not careful, we could actually see another one within the shortest possible time, and that's scary. But you talked about the MO of these guys the other time, and the accounts that we've read, in the media about, how they went about this is very, very concerning. There are those who say, look, even before this thing happened, there were people meandering, loitering around the perimeter of the service, of the facility, and the residents were seeing them. And, even the residents were suspecting this is not normal. These people, milling around, it's not a normal occurrence, but they are there. It would seem like no one was challenging them. Even if there was any challenge to any one of them, it didn't hold any water, clearly. My mind right now is about what exactly is happening to the residents around that place who had to go through all that they had to go through. But, you're another psychologist. That's another question for you. How do we prevent this, especially with the people meandering around these facilities? These things don't just happen. You also heard, you cited the Edo, example the other time. Those who are saying, look, even before that attack happened, there were people milling around. And it would seem like they just continued unattacked, unchallenged by anyone. From a security perspective, from an intelligence perspective, how should we be dealing with this, especially in the light of the fact that we had security information? I've always believed that intelligence, we always have them. Actioning them, that's the challenge. How do we prevent this when we have, especially when we have intelligence? You just dropped one now.
Okay, to start with, I'm a psychologist, and I'm just, if not for ASU, I will have backed my PhD in psychology as we speak.
My apologies.
So, but that's not what we're discussing right now. You see, there's a problem with the way the prison facility is being structured. And one thing, when you are building something like that, something in security we call crime prevention through environmental design. You need to look at where the location is and take advantage of some of the environment to build security architecture such that incursion will be difficult, because by the time you layer your security, your security around that facility, it will be difficult. The closer you get to the center, the more difficult it becomes. But we've not actually seen this, and we've been expecting that over the years this would have been put into effect, because I've visited several prisons in Nigeria, and I can tell you for a fact that this is not the case. You see, it is difficult for us to say people cannot come to the prison. The inmates have right to visitors, and there are people who are families to the NCS, because most of the buildings you see around are actually accommodations for NCS officers. They have families, they have children. But the problem is that the facility should have been designed in such a way that there have been several layers where the level where you see those people will be far away from the center, and there have been other layers that will have prevented that, you go through screening 1, screening 2, screening 3 before you even get into the main gate. But this we are not seeing. You see, right now, this is what government should start doing now. It's not about gun. It's not about the number of armed men that you put in the facility. The cheapest way for you to protect such facility, it is through restructuring of the architectural design of our prison. That is number one. Number two, I would expect that the president will call Council of State meeting right now and address the governors, bringing in all the past presidents and address the governors. Mr. Governor, if you cannot sign death warrants, please don't go for re-election. This is not, you don't become a governor and now be arrested by moral burden. There are a lot of those people have been condemned to death. Case closed. Appeal Court, Supreme Court, over 25 years. And in all the prisons where we've had this incursion, all the condemned criminals are gone. They are out there. They've not been able to recover 5 of the condemned criminals that escaped and what these people will do is that because it's difficult for them to be reintegrated into the society, they go back into the underworld and continue crimes. And how do we continue to keep people that are deadly, murderers, people who have killed several people, and the prosecution have done their work, the court has done its own work, and the prison, has been able to hold them while this process. All it requires is for the state governors to sign and then let the process be completed. Number one, it will help to decongest. Number two, it will reduce the risk and threats in all our prisons because they constitute the highest or the greatest level of threats, because they are the one that you must provide the highest level of restriction and control over. And we continue to keep those people there. This has to be looked into. And also, the third thing that I believe that federal government should do right now is to decentralize our prison system. Let the state be able to build a prison. And so that what this would do is that all those issues around lesser crimes, people, that have committed traffic offense, they are taken to court charge them. They have been sentenced to 3 months in prison. And you see all of them in Kirikiri. You see them in different prisons. Mingling with those ones that are condemned, mingling with those ones that are still going to trial for murder, for treason, for terrorism, and the rest. You see, this because these people are carrying less. Are facing offenses with lesser charges. There is limit to the level of restrictions you can give to them. So this makes the prisons, level of restrictions to be varied. And this leads to compromise. You see many of these people's family coming because the issues around this set of inmates are not so strong. So we need to allow the state to build its own prison so that this caliber of inmates, can be, in state prisons. And federal prisons will be able to take care of those that are, facing federal charges, federal crimes, treason, terrorism, and high caliber, crimes. And they will be able to build, effective security around those facilities. And also, the numbers of those people in those facilities will be reduced. So there are quite a lot of things that we need to do in the immediate right now. It's not just about moving the military. How many personnel do we have in Nigerian armed forces today? They are fighting in Northeast, they are fighting in Northwest, they are there trying to make the Southeast to be habitable right now. And then you want to start deploying them into all the prisons in Nigeria to be able to keep all those people. The governors have to do their work.
Yeah, it may seem like we have a lot of time to wait for the government to begin to do their work in terms of, solution to this very big challenge. But we can't ask enough, enough questions on accountability. And I'd like to follow up on Chamberlain's point earlier with this about the conclusion or the suggestion of the Senate President's visit yesterday that what happened must have been done with the help of an insider. Now, does this lend credence to reports from the day before also that soldiers in charge of Kuje prison were withdrawn 24 hours before the attack? And if indeed, there is complicity at the highest level on the Kuje prison attack, what would be the goal? What would be the agenda? Perhaps you have some insights to share on this.
You see, we'll still have to wait for the outcome of the investigation. Most of the things we are hearing now are at best hearsay. The first thing I heard was that it was a routine relief of officers on duty being replaced by new ones, which is routine, and it follows, the routine and the calendar. So to me, if that is the case, it's not something that is unusual. But if they were removed and they were not replaced, then I can say probably they tried to, reduce the security coverage of the environment. But that in itself is not. I mean, there are all that things that we need to consider, and I've seen these times without numbers. My understanding of someone carrying arms, or if you are working in a regimented organization, military or paramilitary, is that when you're on duty, you must be 100% at alert. You must perform your duty, make all your, your patrol checks with full and 100% attention. But that is not the case in Nigeria. And I'm saying this so that the authorities need to address this. A situation where somebody that is on duty, that is standing on guard duty, will be leaving the duty post at every prayer time. At every prayer time. When it is time for prayers, they will leave their duty post to go and pray. We are allowing, see, a soldier, an arm-carrying person, you are not an ordinary person. It's never done. Even Islamic countries, religious countries, Vaticans, if you are on duty, when they are praying, you don't join them. You do your prayer with your vigilance. Even, I remember even in the Bible, when they were rebuilding Jerusalem, the Bible said that they were building with one hand and using one hand to carry spear. You are supposed to be on the watch 24/7 when you are on duty. We need to address this. Bauchi attack that brought us to where we are today was as a result of the people on guard duty. They left their duty post close to it to go and do prayer. They were praying when these people attacked. The people who also attack, they are also religious adherents as well. But that particular point, that they suspended their prayers to carry out the attack. They know that they can always recover the prayer. And they know that our people would definitely leave their own duty to pray. Anyone that is on duty to protect a facility, God, our agency should ensure that they must not be allowed to leave the facility to go and pray. Look at the time that the attack happened.
Yeah, no, you raise very crucial and interesting points there, because if they're able to attempt and attack the president's advance convoy, who says tomorrow they cannot attempt to attack the villa? So, you know, and the facts are clear for themselves about this matter, because we've seen the way the security agencies can respond when it had to do with Sunday Igboho, for instance. We've seen the way the authorities can respond when it has to do with IPOP, for instance. And these kind of things, security agencies don't just unilaterally act. They act based on instructions and directive. And we've also seen the way they act when it comes to these kind of issues. And so it just comes, it looks as though, wait a minute, is somebody just not giving the directive and giving the order and allowing these terrorists have a free reign? Because you started out saying they should have known that they were going to attack this prison, because these people had been demanding they release some of their people who were in Kuje. And now, now that these ones have escaped 64, they've not told us what is going on with that 64. Kogi might be the next. And nothing might be done, and then Kogi is attacked. We come back to this kind of scenario, because chances are, from what we've seen with these attacks, this can happen again. That's why people say there's certainly more questions that the authorities are not telling us about this.
You see, one thing I can tell you for a fact is that aside the fact that from benefit of insight, that they should know that the attack is going to take place, is the fact that they actually got intelligence.
Wow.
The problem we have is not for death of intelligence. In fact, I read it somewhere that even on that same day, earlier that same day, they got intelligence that attack is going to take place on that facility. Now, the issue is this. Intelligence products are classified and they are directed to a particular consumer that they expect that whether a policymaker or an action agency. And when it is directed to these people, there are recommendations that comes with every intelligence product that is being disseminated, and it will be highlighted in view of the foregoing. It is advised that you carry out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the immediate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 medium term, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long-term measures. Intelligence, it is not for death of intelligence, but this is where the problem lies. And you will bear witness to this, that some of this intelligence, after it has been shared with this agency, they will cascade it down without, applying appropriate classification and appropriate protection to those information, to the extent that even some of these people will photocopy it and put it on social media. So the intelligence are there. It's not properly handled or managed. You see, we need to really go deep down. In our Official Secret Act, in our Constitution, our Official Secret Act, there is something that is called Security Standing Order. The Security Standing Order puts, espoused all the actions each government department, organization, and agency are supposed to put in place for information and document security. It is expected of them to even establish the office of departmental security officer. Check all the parastatals, how many of them are having the office of the DSO. These are part of what the law states, that to help us to be able to manage information, government document, classified information that gets into their hands. This information, as has been given to them, ends up in the hands of the enemies. Because these people are even selling information. It's so bad.
Well, we're doing this such that the authorities will at least be there to address these concerns and ensure that they don't happen. Well, the president has visited the place. We're waiting to see what next steps will be taken on this matter. Thank you for talking to us today, Sheyi Adetayo, former state security operative.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're back in a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, let's get some perspective on what could have been some of the causative factors. You never know. Well, now we're joined by Dr. Mrs. Uju Agomo, who is the founder and director of PRAWA. PRAWA is a security, justice, and development-focused non-governmental organization with regional, continental initiatives in several African countries. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, speaking about the custodial centers, we've always raised concerns about the nature of those custodial centers, which may have been a springboard for these kind of issues, but it appears to be systemic because several ministers of interior, the judiciary, several concerns have been raised about it, but it still appears as though either we're not doing enough or not doing anything at all. So you've been involved in this area. Tell us about what you've found.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's indeed quite saddening because we have a lot to motivate us to do the right thing. And just to make a case around this, I want to just mention to you that on the 31st of July 2019, the president signed into law the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019. And that law provided a lot of things that if we have taken steps to activate, we will not be where we are. I would just let you know. So first you have the issues around the facilities, what needs to be done to fortify the facilities, and they're quite clear. Then you also have the issue relating to the kinds of persons who are in custody. So you will have a very high number of persons who have not been convicted. We have overcrowding in over 30 facilities out of the 244 across the country. Almost everyone that is located in a cosmopolitan or urban area is overcrowded. then you are also talking about a process that have not clearly distinguished the different categories of inmates and ensure that not only the facility, the structure, but also the regime, the treatment, the programs in those facilities are aligned to the kind of inmates and the kind of risk those inmates present. I'll give you an example. You know, when I talked about the issue about what the Nigerian Correctional Service Act have indicated and why, as a nation, we are doing what we are doing to ourselves. I just don't get it. Now, I'm going to read for you Section 28 of that Act. Section 28 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019. Sub 1, it says, there shall be provided monitoring devices to protect, control, and safeguard correctional activities, including observatory towers, double parameter walls, closed circuit televisions, body scanners, e-monitoring devices, electrically activated alarm systems, and other instruments of restraint. Sub 2, the Correctional Service shall establish and maintain a fully equipped armed squad, intelligence and investigation unit to enhance security, surveillance, monitoring, intelligence gathering, and protection. And sub 3, which is the last I'll read here. In deploying the facilities under subsection 1, priority shall be given to the security requirements of maximum security custodial centers. So I think what we ought to have done is that every maximum security facility, every facility that do harbor high-risk offenders or high-risk detainees should really be equipped according to these sections that I have read to you. Section 28, sub 1, sub 2, sub 3. And why are we not doing it? Even now, we should create a state of emergency now and ensure that the needful is done. If you have control towers, those control towers are supposed to be manned 24 hours. And intelligence should be coordinated on a minute-to-minute basis. I had some discussion a while ago about the need to be careful, even in terms of the Ashore Rock, in terms of so many other things. And I think as a nation, we should ensure that this is done and done ASAP. This is a trigger, but let this trigger teach us something. So if you talk about overcrowding, you need to be able to take the inmates that are high risk, put them in the right places so that the adequate processes for that type of inmate will be put in place. That's not happening everywhere. And the judiciary, the police, the other players within the justice system should fast track this process. If you look at that same Nigerian Correctional Service of 2019, it also tells you clearly what you should do for those who have not been convicted. It also tells you what you should do to control the overcrowding level of that every facility. Section 12, subsection 4 to 12 of that same act. So on one angle, you have issues about overcrowding. You have issues about high number of persons who have not been convicted, awaiting trial, persons who have stayed very long, and of course getting more angry. You have overutilization of imprisonment. You have the whole part 2 of that Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 that stipulated clearly the non-custodial sanctions, and we are not utilizing that enough. Imprisonment should be as a very last result. So you can see all of these factors playing together. But again, let this anger, let this fear, let this particular situation make us to wake up as a nation and do something ASAP.
put it, for instance, one of the things that comes to mind on that one is, so we have the law. We have, we know that the National Assembly has their job cut out for them, and they did what they are expected to do quite well. Is that to say that there wasn't really a plan to execute that law that was put out? Because I expect that because they knew, the right thing to do and they positioned it accordingly, in that law, there is some recommendation that should have gone, especially maybe to the House committee or Senate committee that's supposed to be supervising that function.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. And I think this have almost become a pattern in this nation. That on one angle, and you take it all around, you have very good laws and you talk about the implementation, okay? So you're right. The law have been put in place since 2019, for God's sake. Since July 31st of 2019. You need to be able to activate the implementation of that law. So within that law, it says you needed to create, okay, I'm just giving an example. So you have the custodial arm and you have the non-custodial arm. The whole part 2 talks about the non-custodial arm. The same law talks about establishing a new directorate, such as the Directorate of Non-Custodial and the rest of that. Now, at the moment, as much as I know, no single penny have been released to implement the non-custodial components. I mean, how can we do a thing like this to ourselves? Because the establishment of the non-custodial arm, what it did was to provide a holistic spectrum for supervising those who you may call those who are at risk. Because what it did was to have the custodial officers who would then attend to these persons while they're in custody, for those who need to be in custody. Whilst you have the non-custodial officers who would then supervise those persons who, one, have been sentenced to non-custodial services in the community, as well as those persons who have been either released from custody, but you see that there are also persons that needed to be further rehabilitated or reintegrated and things like that, and followed up and monitored. So it is important, even the staffing, even the necessary logistics to make this work. So how can we have something that clearly prioritizes security? And it didn't say do it for all the facilities. It said prioritize that for these maximum security facilities. And then you have other types of facilities, including open farms and all the rest of that.
Just a second.
Yes.
You seem to be drawing, connections to various ministries, departments, and agencies. There's a function for the National Assembly. They seem to have done that, but it's not just to make the law, but they're also supposed to oversight. And then you also drawing,
and also bring money. And also, yeah.
Okay, well, so you've also drawn the fact that, okay, maybe the Ministry of Interior have their job cut out in that same law. Their own component seems to be lacking. Can you give us an overview, or maybe some kind of timeline, or a line of activities that ought to take place to ensure that such a thing that we are talking about now should never even have been spoken about in the first place? This is not the only one. We have had several, and from speaking with a former DSS official this morning, he says if we're not careful, within the next few weeks or months, we may have another experience. So, in order to avoid this, which ministries, departments, or agencies, including the National Assembly, should get up off of their butt now and get going?
Okay. I think the best way to look at it is to tell you the key things that need to happen, and you see. And I think part of what we must see is we must put ourselves in a mode of what I call a whole of society approach. So you have a whole of government approach, but you have a whole of society approach. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. So let me start from the whole of government approach. Within a whole of government approach, you understand that there is a role, for example, the justice institutions that fall within the justice system. If the police are arbitrarily arresting people, then having more persons who ought not to be there in that place. If you have prosecution that is not being done diligently, you have judiciary that is not fast-tracking the trials of those who are before it. You then have a backlog of persons who are in custody who need not to be there. Section 12, as I mentioned to you, is one thing that should trigger an early warning system. So in that section 12, it says every facility that have exceeded its capacity, every facility in Nigerian Correctional Service has designated capacities. So, and it says within 1 week, that the officers in charge, the superintendent in charge, or the state controller should immediately activate an early warning process, which means notify these relevant bodies, including the chief judge of the state, including the attorney general of the state, including the chairman of the prerogative of mercy for the state and all that, to say, listen, we have a problem here, we're sitting. And there are certain things those persons are supposed to do, including diverting more minor offenders out of the things and all, out of the criminal justice system and all the rest of them, so that they can serve non-custodial. Now, if you do that, what you do is, if you activated that section 12, subsection 4 to 12, what those agencies in the justice system would have achieved is that they will provide a situation where you will have fewer persons who really need to be in custody. Those persons who need to be in custody will enable the correctional officers to have more opportunity and time to concentrate in engaging with these people. Now, if you hear that over 70% of those in custody have not been convicted, because if you have not been convicted, what happens is that the process of reformation, rehabilitation becomes very challenging for you, because one, nobody knows how long you're going to stay. And therefore, it will be difficult to make a proper plan for you. Now, another implication around this is that it will be difficult to transfer you from a facility that is overcrowded to a facility that is not overcrowded, because the Controller General has that power to do that, transfer anybody from one facility to another within the country. At the zonal coordinator, the SCG can do that within the zone, and the state controller can do that within the state. So that shows you that people within the justice system need to do something. Within the core security sector agencies, the issue of intelligence sharing, the issue of building synergy becomes critical. Now, you tell me, why will we not ensure that these equipments are put in place ASAP? If you go to any
sounds like a lot of responsibility, madam, and we can't talk enough about the National Assembly's responsibility to oversight. Speaking of which now, have you seen, particularly because we've had quite a number of jailbreaks, have you seen enough of oversighting to lead to all of this supervision and details that you've talked about? And perhaps if you haven't, has it got anything to do with budget? You would see National Assembly members oversighting other ministries and agencies that appear to be more lucrative. So does it have to do with budgeting?
Yeah, that's one part of it, but in terms of the oversight, but also remember the issue about budgeting. So, for example, not just the budgeting for the oversight, but budgeting to implement what you have put in place in the law itself. So that needs to be done ASAP. But in terms of oversight, it also needs to be done. The same act, and there's a reason I keep taking us back to this act, because we already have the enabling facility to make this working. Section 21, Section 22 of those acts talks about 3-4 different levels of oversight. None have been activated. None have been activated. So we cannot continue like this. And I am thinking that this is really an emergency.
Sadly, we lost connection through to Mrs. What's her name again? Uju Gomo, and she said a lot about the maximum security prisons and the need to transfer prisoners appropriately depending on the category of their crime. I was going to ask her, why keep high-profile criminals in the first place in medium security prisons instead of maximum security prisons where they truly belong?
Well, all of those questions, many, more so now that the president visited the area. So many are waiting to see what will the president do about this. Don't forget, his advanced party was attacked. So that is supposed to be something he cannot afford to take with a pinch of salt or with levity this time out, because many are looking to see. And it's not just because of him, because of the office he occupies. It's the office, basically. Because if that office is disregarded or treated in that manner by those people or by whoever, that speaks a lot about how they will regard the country.
Emboldened.
Yes, and they're all watching from wherever they are. They're taking cues. You remember, I don't know how the word just keeps coming to me that certain people seem to be testing certain things at certain point in time.
Well, it's not a secret, what you say.
So,
it's not a secret.
It's
I
out
mean,
there.
I haven't heard of an attack on any part of Abuja since, what,
2014?
14? and don't forget, Chamberlain, if you remember, there have been a number of people who've been saying, let's not pay lip service to this. Abuja is vulnerable. Remember, a good number of people have told us, look, they're attacking, there are spots of, all of these activities, insecurity activities around Abuja city. And now this is like really close home. How many kilometers away is it from Asoro?
Remember we discussed it here too, the so-called directive, so-called because, I mean, we're trying to see if there's any truth to it, that the minister in the FCT or the ministry of the FCT was trying to direct people to what? Shut down by 7 p.m. And we did say, wait a minute, so if that happens, isn't that going to be some sort of cover for some of these activities to happen? And before long, this happened.
And even if that there's a reconsideration about that closing time of businesses in Abuja, do those residents now have a sense of safety to work beyond that time?
The thing is, remember the president of the Senate was there, and he said they told him, so they can't afford to lie to him. I hope. Because they said
300 people.
300 people.
terrorists.
How can 300 terrorists, well armed, and when you talk about terrorists, you know the weaponry they go with. How can 300 of them be walking the streets of Abuja, the nation's capital?
Walking. Underscore that. Underline that. Walking.
Whatever they even used.
No. That's important to underscore. They were walking on foot. Please underscore that. They were walking. Where were the security operatives? So no one saw anything.
What vehicles did they come in? Did they come in motorcycles?
Bukola, they were on their feet. Is there a different way to say walking? That's what they told the president of the Senate. All right, so who saw something and didn't say anything? One. Two, you raised the issue of the residents. Mr. Adetayo said something that we should pay attention to. It wasn't just the terrorists that were released. Murderers, thugs, and
rapists,
all the
arsonists,
miscreants of society. Who are they going to go after? The very people who testified against them, or the very people who reported them. How safe are those people now?
And they had demanded that they wanted these people to be released, the terrorists. They knew where they were, and then this happened.
And Chamberlain, you kept saying, during the break that there's going to be another attack, and Mr. Adetayo emphasized it. He, in fact, shared intelligence about Kogi, and he said Kogi also bears high-profile prisoners. So the security architecture of Kogi prison, is it being reviewed right now? Who's, taking a second look at the Kogi prison, such that any attack on that correctional center will be forestalled?
Well, Chamberlain, we have to.
Okay, let's go to those messages.
We need to thank Dr. Uju Agomo, President of the International Corrections and Prisons Association. We couldn't really do that properly, but a number of messages. You want to take the first one, Chamberlain?
Okay, let me help you. Go ahead.
Olumide Enoch Moye says about the Kuje prison invasion. Is it possible in modern-day Nigeria that 48 hours after the attack and knowledge that over 60 inmates escaped, we do not have the tabloid, press, or TV media houses publish photographs of the escapees, and the Controller General is still in office? Now we have a retired AIG telling us to be on the lookout in the outskirts of Abuja, as these escapees might be seeking manual labor for survival. And so we should activate our body language sensitivity to identify the escapees.
They've not released these things to us. Meanwhile, they're supposed to have BVNs. You can't do anything without BVN, without your name. They blocked your phones. How come these people have phones in cells and nobody can trace them? Nobody knows who they are. We don't know who they are. How come?
Okay.
Activate body language sensitivity. I can't get over that immediately. Okay, let's take this next one from Henry Ewonwu. He says, it's a reasonable suspicion to advance collusion and compromise, given that the CCTVs and other tracking devices are non-functional. Was the facilities management waiting for the FEC to award contracts for their repairs or new procurement. The embarrassment is unbearable. Heads should and must roll. Well, Henry, we're wondering about that ourselves and about so many other things as far as the Kuje, the attack on the Kuje Correctional Center is concerned. Okay.
Well, I think we have to call it a day right now. I'm sure that our viewers are, well, maybe not. John Okparacha says the pictures I saw on Kuje, well, I'm sorry I couldn't take that as well. Looks like we're totally out of time. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching.
I'm Chain Bellinosa. Goodbye.